I am going to put the recording on. So now I'm actually going to sound like I'm smart from here on out because, maybe we didn't a few minutes ago. All right. So I am not sharing my screen yet, but I want to say welcome to everybody. Thank you for joining us. Afternoons with AzTEA November edition. This is so much fun. We're so happy that everybody's here, especially so close to moving into the holidays. We get to talk about inquiry learning today, which is super fun. Throughout our time together, we will have information dropping into the chat. Please be sure to ask questions in the chat. You don't have camera as our attendees, you don't have camera or audio, but we do a lot of interacting in there. So please be sure to share all your thoughts in the chat as we're going along. One of the things to know, it looks like you should be seeing us on gallery view, which means you're seeing everybody. I am going to be sharing screen, which will cut the view out a little bit. So you can always hover over the top right of your screen where it says view, and you can adjust that to customize it to the way you want to be seeing all of our bright, shiny faces. So as we dive in, I want to let you know that we have, and I'm going to go in order of what I'm seeing on my screen, Dr. Nancy Pratt, who is the Director of Instruction at Buckeye Elementary School District. She's joining us today along with Heather. Please say your last name.
Orozco.
Thank you, because I can't make it sound that stunning. And she is the curriculum coordinator for science and social studies, joining us as well. Emily Marshall, who is with Vail, and make sure I get it right. It's the assistant director of educational technology. Did I get it right? Yes, cool. And then Monica, share what your title is, and then pronounce your last name again for me because I get it wrong every time.
My name is Monica Gilfillan, and I work with Imagine Learning. I've been here almost 12 years, and I'm the lead account executive for Arizona.
Nice, thank you. Because I tend to say Gilligan.
Yeah, that's close enough. It's close enough.
Every time for like years I've done it, and I'm like, I'm just not even going to try to say her name because I want it to happen properly. So again, today we're going to be talking about inquiry learning. Great resource. So if you are here, but you later on go, oh my gosh, somebody else needs to see this, be sure to share the recording. We'll be posting it so that people can see it. And you can share it out anytime with your teachers, with your other coaches, with anybody who would benefit from learning about these resources and strategies. Use it for your PD, reach out to us for more support and to continue the conversation. And our goals for today, by the end of our time together today, we will have accomplished at least these things. I think it's going to be more. First, we're going to talk about what the difference is between inquiry learning and direct instruction. Second, we're going to say, why do we want to bring inquiry learning into the environment? So we're going to ask that question and we're going to answer it. Talk a little bit about how this changes the way the classroom operates and how it impacts the teacher. Right? What kind of concerns, challenges, opportunities does making this shift provide? And then let's look at some tools and some strategies for how we can integrate these things as well. How does that sound? Good? Can we do that in like 40 minutes?
We got it.
Sure. Why not? Right? We got it. All right. So let's dive in. And this can go to anybody. I will check that, Emily. I'm not sure when you guys start talking. Because it says that attendees cannot chat right now, and I'm not sure why that's the case. So take your notes and write them on your hand or something, because we don't want to lose anything that y'all have to say. So what is inquiry learning? First of all, let's make sure we get a baseline so we all understand what it is. Who wants to jump in and talk to that?
Do you want to go, Nancy?
I know, right?
I know. Heather, go ahead. Well, inquiry learning is just really starting with that compelling question and really letting kids investigate to sort of solve a problem and to think through a situation. So it's really not telling them the information, but guiding them with a really compelling question.
And when we say compelling question, who wants to expand on that? Because if I'm not a teacher, if I'm a parent and I hear compelling question, I'm like, what are you guys talking about? Right. Compelling, like interesting?
Right. Well, first off, we can say compelling as in not a yes or no answer. And also compelling as in something that is meaningful to the, to the students or the, the group of people experiencing that question. So that would be a couple ideas.
Would that tie to relevance? So would relevance be, if we said relevant question instead of compelling question, would it be similar or would it be in the same like ballpark?
Well, I think it's both, really. I mean, you think let's say we're talking about social studies teachers, right? And this is tough. That's a tough time to be in the classroom right now when you're creating these compelling and relevant questions. So let's say we wanted to talk immigration in 612 social studies. We know a lot of our students have experiences with this, right? But how do you sort of let go of that sage on the stage and pose a compelling question like that, be brave enough to propose a question like that, and then allow the students to guide the discussion and share? It's not easy. And I think it takes a support from our administrators, and it takes a lot of professional development.
And some
And I think these questions are really big picture, right? So if I'm talking about immigration, I don't have to be talking about one instance of immigration in history. I'm talking about just immigration. And how are those things similar across time, across places? So just really big picture type of questions.
Yeah, like revolutions, for instance, too. Not the Battle of the Bulge necessarily, but what is, what makes a revolution? Why are there revolutions? What are revolutions having in common over time or space? So just that bigger question.
Well, and I think when we talk about relevance too, one of the things that and it just popped to mind as we were as y'all were talking, is a different conversation that I was having that talked about relevance to whom, or is it who? Whom? If just because it's relevant to the educator doesn't necessarily mean it's relevant to the kids. And a lot of times we talk about giving student choice, but a choice between two things somebody doesn't want isn't a choice at all, really. So, when we're having those questions that are being created, those compelling questions, I think it circles back to what Heather was speaking to, that okay, good, it got fixed. I think it's the point that the kids are generating the questions, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
I think they're used to, and it's hard to sort of shake the tree. When I was taught high school ELA and social studies with some special education, and I think a lot of times the kids are used to getting the worksheet, filling out the worksheet, getting the answer, and passing the test and the quiz. And when you won't give them the answer and you say, no, we're going to do this differently, what do you think? You're going to come up with this question answer. They have flipped their lids, and it's really not, it's not easy. So, but it's fun, and they get used to it. And I think it's routine, and it's relationship, and it's building a different classroom culture. And I think we go home less exhausted at the end of the day because we're not up there talking all day long.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And Ray agrees in all capital letters. So she is saying absolutely that she agrees. And I think that's one of the things we always used to say. I always used to say when I was coaching, I'm like, the kids need to go home more tired than you are at the end of the day. And if that's not happening, then let's keep working until they are,
But I think Monica has a really good point in terms of setting up that environment, making it safe to talk to one another, making it safe to have rough draft thinking. I'm not quite there yet, and even across all subject areas, and being able to bring them to a point where they are feeling competent and confident to articulate their justification or their generalization about a topic, and then standing behind the reasons why. That's fun. That's like deep. That's awesome when that can happen.
Like a real life skill set. Like that's something we will take out into the real world and use. What?
Well, absolutely. And I think if you get parents who are confused by this, or they're not sure, we hear a lot of, whether it's aunts or uncles or grandparents, these kids today don't have any social skills. They need to get off their phones and talk to each other, right? Well, here you go. This is what we're doing, right? We're giving them the opportunity to do this. If you have questions about how this works, come in and take a look, or watch a video of this classroom and see what they're doing here.
Such
and let's really think about our today students and the differences that they've had over the last maybe 3 years. And I know, Heather, you can probably speak to this quite a bit in terms of those social skills. And I don't want to make it overdone, but certainly students can definitely benefit from being probed and, invited to collaborate in a way that's meaningful and safe and productive.
And setting your classroom up for that type of conversation is so paramount. Like, we have to make sure that it's a safe place, and everyone, we provide parameters and training wheels, really. Like, this is how you're going to have this conversation this time, because they don't know how. So teaching them the skills within all of this, I think, has been super helpful. At first, it's a little, sketchy for them. They think that you're asking me to do what now? You want me to say what I'm thinking?
Right.
Is there a right answer? They get,
yeah,
I don't want to be wrong.
Mhm.
And so just getting them to that point, I think.
So we can't expect, or we can't, I don't want to say can't, I don't like to say can't. We may not experience the penultimate success in the first time that we bring these types of things into our classroom.
no, yeah, it
Right.
takes a minute, yeah.
It takes time, because it's kind of like, for us, we have to be okay with, or it really is beneficial to be okay with things being kind of messy at first, and learning side by side and figuring it all out. I was talking before we all got here, I don't know, maybe y'all were in the room. But we were talking about, this reminds me of tech integration. Like, when I would first work with educators to bring tech into the classroom, that was 100 years ago now, right? But it was very similar in the sense, or it felt very similar in the sense that we had to be okay with going slow to go fast down the road. Like, we were going to lose, I'm air quoting lose, because we're not losing instructional time, because we're just doing other things with it and learning other skill sets. But we want to be okay with that, because the idea is that it is going to, it is going to save time down the road. You are going to have a totally different student that walks out of your classroom at the end of the day, when they've spent 40 minutes or however long discovering for themselves about the content, instead of being fed the content by us as the instructors, when we're not the ones that need to take that information out to the world.
Yeah.
I think that's one of the biggest challenges for teachers, right? Is I have to be able to let go a little bit of I am the sole, source of information, and that can't be.
No.
And I think that's a huge shift for teachers.
Mm-hmm. And isn't that, has anybody met too many teachers that don't have a little bit of a thing where we enjoy managing our environment? How am I saying that? But you know what I mean? Like, I was a tape dot teacher. Yeah. I always joke, like, my kids had to put their desk on the tape dot. Like, if you didn't have your desk on the tape dot, I was going to lose my
On the tape dot.
on the tape dot. Yeah. Yeah. And, so I don't know. So, Emily, do you have thoughts, or are you monitoring chat, and are you good? Because I know that you have so many good things to say all the time that I don't want you to miss an opportunity.
Yeah, I was watching chat. I don't know if I'm going to make an intelligent connection between these two things, but I've been thinking a lot lately about, the kids on the margins and kids that aren't always served by our school systems. And so Michelle Wilson and AzTEA introduced me to this book. It's called Street Data. Has anyone heard of it?
Mm.
It's about equity, pedagogy, and school transformation. And it's about how to meet the needs of the kids on the margins. And it talks a lot specifically about race, but it's kids, whether they're in SPED or whether they're gifted or whether they're LGBTQ or whatever. And so what you're saying and the way you're describing this speaks to the fact that, like, it feels like it'll pull those kids in and be more culturally responsive and, like, let them bring their voice to the classroom, where sometimes, a lot of times, kids are alienated if they're not the worksheet or the standardized testing. It sounds like a way of teaching that would reach kids that aren't always served by our school systems.
100%. Well, let's think about it. Some of our gifted kids, or the kids who have parental support, we've got them in debate. We've got them in speech team. We've got them analyzing primary sources and putting together their thoughts. And how do all of our kids have access to that experience before they leave the classroom? No,
they don't.
If we shift this practice, right, and we have it in core social studies, ELA, math, science, right? They get the
Yeah, we want we say we want to meet the needs of all kids, but we just mean most kids. And so like this would give more kids the opportunity to have their needs met.
Mm-hmm.
I think this model gives me hope for the future of our democracy. We've been through some really dark times, and our grown-ups don't necessarily know how to behave themselves, right?
Mm-hmm.
And they're seeing these adults on television, right? The language, the inappropriate, aggressive behavior. We can't stand for that. We cannot stand for it. And it's our responsibility, I think, to impart healthy, healthy communication skills and healthy political discourse to our kids. And if we can get it right here, they grow up and they lead this world in a very different way.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, 100%. I'm looking at Ray's question about what kind of foundations support creating that culture, and I feel like I would just speak to creating that culture of kindness in your classroom, and the culture of discourse, and the culture of listening. I mean, just basic skills, right? Here in Buckeye, we coach teachers, and we support the idea of second questions. So I ask the question, but then I ask another question, to support that deeper thinking. And using cooperative learning, I as a teacher may pose the question, but I want to hear everyone's thoughts with each other. Do you know what I mean? Like 100% engagement means there's more than one person talking or answering the questions. And so for me, that culture in my classroom is going to have to stem from ritual practice that we do all the time. It's just how we do business. Is we talk to each other, we listen to each other, we celebrate each other. And if that's a foundation that we've got, then I think we have room in our day, in our procedures and learning environment to go deeper, because we've got that structure in place. I don't know what you guys' thoughts are on that one.
I also think taking the time to help kids get to know one another as people. It's a lot harder to be really mean to someone if you know them as a person and you know you can find common ground. So spending the time to find the common ground and to do those things. And then, right, teaching the kids, I don't have to agree with what they're saying, but I do have to listen and I do have to respond. And there are ways to disagree respectfully, and teaching them all of those skills takes some time up front, but then the conversations that you have are so much richer and so much deeper, and they have so much more meaning when you can build that culture and they have gotten to know each other and they know how to disagree with respect.
Right.
I think is really important.
I agree with both ladies. I would challenge folks to chart their instruction. So I think if we backwards map it and we look at our class period, right? If we really want to get like down and dirty and practical about it, how much time do we spend talking? Are we speaking for 25 minutes straight and then having them talk? And whether we record it or we really reflect at the end of the period and say, oh, right? Or at the end of the week or in our PLCs. I think that's a great place to start.
Yeah.
And then I think there's also neat little routines that you can build in, whether someone's holding the gavel while they're speaking and saying, it's not your turn to speak over me, right? And there's all different little strategies, but if we share them with one another, right? If we start by being present and really noticing how we're showing up in the classroom, and then, tips and tricks always help.
Yeah.
So what are I'm a teacher, and I'm hearing like, okay, I've got to do this inquiry learning thing, but you know what? I've been teaching for 20 years. I've got this. Like, I've been doing this forever my way. It works fine. My kids get good grades. Like, my test scores are great. Like, why am I going to change anything that I'm doing?
Who wants to take that one?
Well, that's real world, isn't it? I mean,
that's
and rightly so. If I got a good thing going in my room, don't fix what's not broken. But really, I think now more than ever, and I feel like kind of we've been saying this for a long time, but truly, that what you both were just saying about that culture and the respect, this is a weird, different world in so many respects, right? And I don't know, my thinking is, and just thinking about some of our awesome teachers we have that do push back because they are doing good work, students are performing. And there are so many great arguments for fostering student to student discourse and fostering student to student problem solving, especially in math. We have a math initiative here, second year as a district, using this one particular curriculum that's great, but it's very different because it forces it just insists on student to student discourse, and which is excellent and so difficult in some places where the foundation and the culture of that kind of work among students is not it's fragile still.
Yeah,
It's
not. Yeah, it's not innate, it's not natural, it's not embedded to the point where that's the natural go-to, as opposed to the you know what, I'm tired, I'm just gonna give them a worksheet, or we're gonna watch a video, as long as streaming's not banned, like streaming's not blocked, we're gonna watch a video and we're gonna do a worksheet just because I'm tired today. Like, once you get those practices into place, that becomes your natural go-to. And in the chat, we're getting some really great comments about Ray said, I'd like to take those teachers on a field trip to an inquiry classroom. And in a couple of minutes, we will actually show part of a video of some cool things happening in inquiry based classrooms and experiences. And some of the things that they speak to are really exactly what we're saying here. Like, we've already got things happening. Why is there a benefit to changing things? And I think one of the key points that everybody's making is we don't teach, and sometimes we forget this in the interest of time, we don't teach new content at the same time as we're teaching new skill sets. And so often, so often in the interest of time, we try to do that. You know what? We're going to bring this new strategy in at the same time I'm going to teach new content because I got to get my content, know? Yeah. And if I'm not going to say it blows up every time, but it blows up almost every time. You know what I mean? And then it's the strategy's blamed, not the content. And I remember, I remember working with a teacher, and we were talking about engagement, and they said, you know what? I don't have time to worry about engaging my students. I have way too much content to cover. And I was like, I totally, and it's, I didn't want to vilify the teacher, but I wanted to be like, and I recognize, like, that's the way a lot of our teachers feel, like, so under the weight of all of this content, that the opportunity for that creativity and that expression and that trying to do things differently in ways that serve students as they move out into the world, isn't necessarily there. So
I think Stephanie hits it on the head in her comment. She says, let's see if I scroll back up, the teachers, you might not be changing, but your students are.
That was fantastic, wasn't it?
Yeah. Thank you, Stephanie. I think we're in the fourth industrial revolution, and if we're still teaching to a factory model, we've got some serious problems, especially with AI and what these kids are going to need to know. We all have profiles of a graduate. We understand what we need to do, right? They're in our district philosophies, right? So if we backtrack this to the profiles of our graduates, is we have to make the move, whether we like it or not, if we want to morally and ethically, do our jobs and prepare these kids for the world that they're walking into.
A seventh grade teacher told me the other day, she's lovely. And she was talking about some students that are struggling and rely on her more than, you would want them to become a little bit more self-sufficient. And so she said, I already know seventh grade math. It's you're trying to learn seventh grade math. So let's, attack the procedure or whatever. But but that's a good point about that sage on the stage, industrialization, period type of teaching.
I also think that's the shift between I taught it and they learned it. Right. Beautiful. So just because you stood up there and said something doesn't mean that they're walking away with anything. But if they've engaged in the work, they're far more likely to walk away, better than when they entered and knowing more.
Absolutely.
And tying into that, just because they had fun doesn't mean that you achieved your goal. You achieved your objective, right? Because so often we hear, oh, they loved the lesson. Well, that's fantastic. And I'm really glad, because we do want entertain. And at the same time, it's okay to have those, once you have the foundation pieces in place, like y'all are talking about, it's a safe place to have those rigorous conversations, have those hard lessons, sit in that space that's not fun, but it's rigorous and it's getting the students to the next space. And I think that runs sometimes with inquiry when we're initially working with it, it gets uncomfortable and it gets, maybe there's quiet and nobody's talking. And so it's easier to just, as the teacher, just to back out of it and be like, okay, I'm just going to give them the answer. Like that's really hard
Yeah.
to not, you know.
Stephanie's
I'm
got
cur-
another great one in the chat. She's on fire today. She says, I think it's also important for teachers to understand that discourse is not content specific.
No.
Discussion should not be limited to ELA, of course, right?
Yes.
How many times have we worked with teachers? Like when I was coaching, they'd be like, Monica, I'm a science teacher. I'm not teaching anybody how to read or debate.
We don't need to write.
I'm not doing any reading. I'm not doing any annotating and reading strategies, right? Get out of here. But it's true, right? We need to be speaking this way in math and science. So I think the professional development, it doesn't have to be discipline specific, right? I think we could do a lot of inquiry as whole group and then ask them, how would you apply this to your specific content?
Yeah. And then how
I'm
can we say-
curious if you guys have advice when you're speaking to, leadership or principals or even teachers. We may be winning because we're getting good grades and we're, have good school labels, but we're not winning because we're not meeting the needs of kids. So how do you make that scary shift from traditional ways that, let us win to things like inquiry learning?
I guess I would start off by saying to be sure to bring them into the conversation, the leadership, at the beginning, do that PD with them, read together, annotate and discuss together what those best practices are and which ones would relate well to our students or your students. I know in Buckeye, we have a huge district-wide push for student-to-student discourse using cooperative learning. And but it has been modeled and shared from all levels in the PLC meeting to the district facilitators meetings, the leadership meetings, and so then it feels like all of our arrows are going in the same direction, not just, Nancy Pratt's classroom or, my school versus your school. We are all in the system. We are all going in the same direction. We're all in different places along the way, but we're in the same direction. I don't know, Heather, if you can, wanted to add anything else to that idea.
Well, and I also think the shift to like collective ownership of what's happening, right? We collectively own all of the kids and so if there are kids that are not succeeding, that falls on all of us. So if Nancy and I are teaching the same grade level and Nancy's kids are killing it, but mine aren't, Nancy's still failing, right? Some kids, because she's not helping me. And so, not that Nancy would ever do that. Nancy would never not help me, but I think just that idea of collective ownership, we all own the kids. And so we all have to look at what is best for kids. And we all have to agree that we're going to do what we know is best for kids.
I think with all the buzz around to Nancy and Heather, high quality instructional materials, right? And making sure that all of our districts have access. I'm not, come on guys, with the YouTube and this is ridiculous. It's got to stop, right? And I know we're not funded properly and I know it's tough to get these resources in place, but our kids deserve high quality instructional materials and our teachers deserve the professional development to implement with fidelity.
Yes.
Period.
Yeah, that could not be more true, and not just 1 year of that movement, a second year, long-term plan for, sustaining. That.
That's
that efficacy of using doing the work with the right resources.
And
Yeah,
that's
it's not, it's hard, no matter
Yeah.
what, but it's so worth the effort to for our kids.
And just from a resource allocation perspective, it's hard. You're right. Like we all get that front end, 10 plus, 15 years in, education PD. And I know like we would get sent out to do that initial, integration training. And then it's, figure it out, call me if you have any questions. Well, it's not, do you have any questions? It's let's help you figure out what are the right questions to ask. You know what I mean? You don't even know the tool well enough to know what it does, to know what questions to ask and what extra amazing ways it can support, just because we don't necessarily have the resources allocated to the development and support. And Nan's dropping stuff in the chat that I'm too busy talking to read, I guess. And what I want to notice is we're at 2:30 and we do have a bunch of resources that we want to share. So we want to make sure that we get there. So can we take a look at what Nan has to say? And then just because I don't know if it bridges into what we're talking about before we start diving into Buckeye has some cool things they're doing with inquiry. Monica has some amazing resources. And then we have a couple other things we wanted to talk about too. So Nan noted creating a toolbox of inquiry-based questions might be something we could work on, or how to create good inquiry-based questions. That's true, because there are good, better, best in terms of the types of questions that we're creating. And then just a shared toolbox of questions. How cool would that be? Question bank? Yeah, I'm sure they exist somewhere, and we should make one and make them accessible. And then Stephanie's back in the mix saying that she agrees that providing teachers with question stems that are content related would be very helpful. I also think it'd be cool to show how the content stems could be cross-curricular.
Yeah.
Like, how cool would that be? Take the same STEM, and then Emily's chatting it up in the chat too. So we were talking before we got on about some tools, Heather, that I know your team's using. You want to share a little bit about that so we can hear like what's happening in live in action?
Yeah, absolutely. One place, so speaking of a bank of maybe questions, particularly for social studies, c3teachers.org is a really great website that has a whole bunch of resources around this idea of inquiry-based social studies. And so it has pooled resources from a lot of different places. And so you can go look for inquiry. If I am teaching about, I don't know, US history, I can go see what they have under the topics. I can look under, yep.
Are you seeing my screen?
Yes.
Cool.
And there are 98 inquiry units there about American history. And so if I was specifically looking at American expansion, I could pull that up and it says, was American expansion abroad justified? So it's that big picture question, but then it's broken down into the supporting questions, which is really kind of nice. So that's one resource. It's got a lot of great inquiries. And I don't know about anybody else, but we are always looking for the cross-curricular tie-ins. And so one of the things that we're asking our particularly science and social studies teachers to do a lot of right now is sort of the writing about these topics. So making sure that the kids can construct some sort of argument, they can make a claim, they can support it with evidence. And we've realized that our teachers do a lot better when we give them a format. And so we have shared with them like a thinking map, a particular format that we want them to sort of have kids structure their writing or plan for their writing, so that they can get all of their ideas on paper. And so that, I think I shared that as well. I don't know if you have that.
Find it, it's in the doc. So it's at the top if somebody wants to grab it and drop it. And if not, I'll do it in a minute.
But it just asks them to make a claim about the topic. Yeah. So if I was answering the question, can disease change the world? Right, I would make some sort of claim about yes, it can, or no, it can't. And then I would provide specific evidence from my inquiry. So if we had been talking about the Black Plague, right? If we had been talking about any of those types of things, that might be where my evidence comes from. And then I would explain how that evidence supports whatever claim I've made that yes, disease can change the world. And then, of course, they give multiple pieces of evidence from multiple different things that we have discussed, and then they restate their claim. So when they have been given this format, the writing that we're getting from kids is so much better. It's so much more robust. It makes sense. The teachers feel more confident in what they've been teaching because they feel like they can see evidence that the kids are taking away. They've answered a question that doesn't have a right or wrong answer, and they've supported it with evidence, and given some sort of justification. So those are some things that we've been looking at and using and have had good success with.
Yeah.
We share this is that you can see it, right? I switched over when I pulled it over. Okay, cool. I wanted to make sure I was sharing the window, not the tab. So can I share this in the chat, the link?
Yeah.
Okay. Very cool.
One thing to add on to what Heather's talking about is we made it a priority to provide the professional learning for the social studies and science teachers to actually to do this. There was a comment in the chat about, it's just not all with ELA. But so that is so true. But all teachers have not been taught how to teach writing necessarily in their programs or, and so going back to that question about how do we move, a large body, a large organization, one of the ways is if that you do have that focused and targeted professional learning time. And so Heather's been incredible with all of our social studies and science teachers. She sees them often and provides that structured professional development that they need, and then inspects in the classroom to see the anchor charts up and to review the writing with the teachers and all that stuff. And so it's not just, it's so much more than here's a good resource. It's here's a good resource. This is how to use it. You try it. And how can you use it in the classroom? And when will you be? So it's that expectation of that high expectation. I think that really supports it. And Heather's just been an amazing, has had that amazing vision for us here.
I want to be doing my cat there. That's awesome. Can I ask a real quick question before we shift? Tell me a little bit, like a 2-second answer on assessment. So here we have, like we have our summative, we have our formative, like, are you only grading on are we teaching that we're only, scoring the summative, I'm assuming, and then we're also using a rubric?
Yeah, our teachers develop rubrics.
Okay.
So they agree district-wide. So we have, we're creating our district formative assessments. And so they agree, how are we going to be looking at these things? And then we bring them together and we calibrate. Does what I think is a 4 on the rubric is the same as what Nancy thinks is a 4 on the rubric. So we're able to calibrate.
Very cool. And then what, Monica, you have a ton of resources. We could do a whole nother hour. And I know we're just kind of picking here. But you had a couple really great things that you shared out with us. One video that we haven't even gotten to watch because we've been talking and I don't even know if we're going to get to. But it really shows authentic inquiry in action. And so we'll make sure if we don't get to it that we attach the links to the videos because it ties in to what was the connection that we had between the site that you just showed us and Heather and what Monica's resources. It's the making come on, help me.
Yeah, making inquiry possible.
Thank you. Making inquiry possible.
And I think why this is powerful because the teacher's vulnerable and she says, listen, I was not perfect at this. And here is where I made my mistakes and it's okay. Right. And she invites you into her classroom and she shows you what the students are doing. She talks about how she builds her compelling questions. So it's a great place to start for somebody who needs a checklist. They can download the checklist, the inquiry orientation checklist that will show everybody, and then they can watch the videos and sort of backwards map their own plan.
Well, and that's what I was thinking. If we have to pick the next thing that we're going to, instead of going to the video, Monica, because we have you here, they can watch the video later. But the inquiry checklist, we were talking about it earlier. It's a fantastic resource. So can you talk to us a little bit about this, and I'll
Yeah, and
drop it
again,
in chat at the same time.
Yeah, for sure. I just challenge folks to just take a look at your classroom, number one, and how often you're talking versus they're speaking, right? That's number one. And then just use this checklist before, during, and after, right? And I like, second to bottom, create a hook exercise that aligns to the compelling question and provides a space for students to become curious, right? I think that's an important one. And I think, look here, collaborate with colleagues to prepare your inquiry. So maybe there's something fascinating going on with the Hubble telescope or Space Force, or who knows? So maybe our science teacher and our social studies teachers are hand in hand talking about this inquiry before it happens. How cool to network with our colleagues.
Right. Get out
So
of the silo a little bit.
Yeah, why not? And it's a lot of
Yeah.
fun. It's a lot of fun, and it's relevant. If you go down to during, I think one of the lines that stands out is number 2, make compelling questions and supporting questions visible to students to ensure that the instruction is framed by questions, not answers, right? Questions. And if it's big Post-it notes and we're up and we're moving around the room, but moving away from that drill and kill worksheet model to the questioning model, I think is really important in that section. And then after, I think collaboration with colleagues, again, we're assessing our materials, our highly qualified instructional materials, but then we're also talking to our colleagues. Does this work? Is this preparing them for life after they leave us? Especially for our kids who struggle, because I think a lot of times we're showing them that failure is, we learn in school that failure is bad, but a lot of times we have to fail to succeed, right? We have to have productive struggle. We have to be wrong.
Right.
And I think it's a really important piece of inquiry classrooms.
And the only way we're ever going to do anything new is if you're not risking, if you're not failing, you're not trying. I'm going to say you're not trying hard enough. You know what I mean? We're not putting ourselves out there. We're not on the edge of our comfort zone, which is where all the learning and the action occurs. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
And
if
give
we're
me a
in our own
checklist.
heads and we're constantly doing what we think is right? We're not looking outside of the box. There's a ton of confirmation bias, and what do we really want here, right?
Yeah. Right. Yeah, I agree. We are at 2:43, so we can go about 10 more minutes. So we can keep the conversation going a little bit, another 5-10 minutes. We go 45 to an hour with Q&A, and we're kind of answering the questions as we go. So I feel like that gives us a little bit of freedom to kind of continue the conversation a little bit. So where do we want to?
I'd like to make a comment about this checklist. It's great. It just kind of puts it in front of us so that we have something to go by, to start, that thinking. Having worked a lot with problem-based learning and project-based learning, one of the things with that compelling question, I think that's really, really important for teachers to do as they are planning, is to really understand what it is they want the students to understand in 5 years. When they walk away, in 5 years and they remember this unit of study, what is it that they hope they understand? What is it they want the students to know about X, Y, and Z, about revolutions or whatever? And what is it that we need to do? And so back to assessment, when we get to the do part, that will help structure, what we're assessing. We're not assessing for periods and capitals. If what we really are assessing is, can we make a claim and defend the claim and restate the claim? And so, really beforehand identifying what it is at the end of the whatever time period that you're really trying to support students thinking with and have them walk away with is really, really important. And so I would just add that to this awesome document.
I'm glad you
as
like
their
it, Nancy. Tomorrow I'm doing a lunch. If anyone can sneak away, I still have 10 spots. It starts at 8 to 1, but we're deep diving into Western expansion and we're using this inquiry checklist. So we've got teachers coming from across Phoenix to just sit down and tear apart some social studies content and really use the checklist. All right, like how do we put the rubber to the road here? It's not easy. So you're welcome to join me if you'd like.
Can you drop the link? Do you have the registration link and the information for us? Because that'd be fantastic.
I sure do. I'll dump it in there. And you can always pop in via Zoom. And if you can't make it all day, I'm going to record what's happening live so you guys can just pop in and see what some of the teachers are doing.
Oh, that's neat. So you're doing a face-to-face and a virtual, like a blend hybrid? You could go either way?
Go
And
either
show
way.
up?
Yeah,
Love it. I know this isn't the ideal. Can you show up for a little bit if virtual, if you can't make it for the whole time?
totally. Just come for like the
She
first
said
hour, take off
she was
if you
going
have
no,
to.
and I was like, oh, okay. I thought you
Yes.
were saying no at first.
Oh, no, you're welcome
You
to
know?
just come and go as needed.
That'd be really, really fun to see.
I like field trips and I
Everything else.
like being face to face with people. It's just I learn better. It's just easier for me to learn that way.
Right.
And Stephanie does have a question in here, and that I don't think that we've answered. Do you feel like the curriculum is trending more towards inquiry and away from direct instruction? Do we find that curriculum is trending more towards inquiry and away from direct instruction? Heather, what do you think? You want to jump in with that? I saw your
Well, I think it depends on the curriculum. Science and social studies, yes. I think they're trending away from direct instruction. I think, a lot of maybe ELA and math tends to be a little bit more. I mean, math, maybe you could go either way. We have an inquiry-based math curriculum, but there are still a lot of things, I think, especially in like primary reading that they do that are just direct. I could be totally wrong on that, but that's kind of my perception, is that one maybe stays. But math definitely has inquiry options.
I think the building thinking classrooms, I see math teachers all over the state. It's so much fun to go to meet in the Arizona Math Leader Association now, because they're rocking this. Like, they've really taken it, and it's so neat to see math teachers leading the way with it.
Right. Yeah,
so much
it really
fun.
is. Yeah, we've got some teachers here working their classrooms that way with the stand-up thinking and the small group collaborations and stuff. It's beautiful to see. You're absolutely right. And I guess my 2 cents about the curriculum would be that it depends on the curriculum. Absolutely. And in our district, we have for ELA, for example, we've got for K through 5, we've got one set of curriculum, like a company. And then we've got this for 3 of our schools for ELA, we've got this other curriculum, and it just feels so much deeper, and it starts, all the units and modules start with that compelling question, even in this ELA, in the ELA topics. And so at the end of the day, though, I think anything could be created in developed as inquiry, and there's just little things we can do as teachers just to move that along. I mean, we can ask that second question. We can open up, ask those questions that are, they don't have a right answer and they're compelling. And we can provide choice to students and have those flexible classrooms. And so there's little things that we can do to, no matter what subject we're talking about or what curriculum we're even using, that we can create that inquiry classroom. That's just some of my thinking.
And I forgot my question. I actually started to open my mouth to say it, and it fell completely out of my brain. And so somebody else talk, because I'm going to see if I can remember it. Monica's dropping the information on tomorrow's event down in the chat. And then Stephanie noted they are currently in the adoption process for 6-8. So that's pretty darn cool.
Good luck.
Yeah.
Yeah. Since I can't remember my question, I know, Monica, you had also shown me a resource called like the Roadmap to Educating for Democracy. Is that something you want to make sure that we speak to?
It's so cool. I found it. I stumbled upon it, and I wish I would have known about it sooner. It was 2 of our professors at ASU were lead authors on this, and our former AzDOE director of social studies. what a cool resource. And I just don't see it out there enough. And you talk about compelling questions and standards. It's awesome.
Okay.
Just awesome. We've got so many things going on in the state of Arizona with National History Day and getting kids ways to compete outside of the classroom and get engaged and, you know, win prizes and show up for the school. It's a lot of fun. It's just a fun way to re-engage kids and especially going into an election year when this could get ugly. I say, let's get ahead of it and make it fun and, you know, sort of take control of it here.
Mm-hmm.
It's
so
called,
this is,
yeah.
check
You got
this.
some
So
design
design,
challenges.
this is cool. Yeah.
Yeah,
Really
it's
neat.
awesome. Very well written, very well thought out. And the NCSS, we're going to a big social studies conference in Nashville, December 1st. So we'll get to be with teachers from around, you know, across the country, and we'll go into, you know, things like this. So I'll bring back everything from Nashville and I'll get it to you guys and we can post it.
Great.
Love it. So we are going to start moving into, believe it or not, it's been almost an hour already. Which to me, it's flown by. And
Yeah.
but going into final thoughts, and can I be like totally selfish and take the first part of the final thought? Because I don't want to forget, because now I remembered. The one of the things that somebody mentioned, it's not my thought, but mentioned that one of the really important things to do in your district, your workplace, or whatever, is to have a champion for this work. And so because it's rigorous, because it is less traditional, really having somebody that's championing this cause is so essential, because if you don't, it's not necessarily going to happen, you know? So I don't know if anybody has any thoughts, want to add on to that and then go from there with your final thought, or just want to let that land where it is.
Well, I think somebody does have to champion this. It's always nice. We can't expect that, you know, everyone is just going to do this on their own. There has to be some sort of driving force behind this. But I think also knowing that if we just got to be willing to try. Like if everybody would just try it and know that it's okay to fail, it's okay to try little chunks, and then move forward from there. Because I think sometimes we get so overwhelmed in this is different, that we don't even want to try.
Right.
I think just taking that first step. So just be brave.
Yeah.
Be brave.
Yeah, I'm with you, Heather. I agree with that 150%. And it, you know, it does, as we said before, it doesn't have to be this ginormous thing. You know, it could just be the act of changing your, you know, your learning target that you put on your board, changing that to a question. Instead of today, we're going to learn about Russian, you know, the revolutions. Turn that into a compelling question. Just turn the thing into a question and then revisit that question throughout the learning period. And, you know, are we getting closer to the, you know, how would we talk about this? Whatever. That is just one teensy thing that I can do as a teacher, to start changing from telling to thinking.
Fantastic way to start that. All right, who else? What else
And
you
I
guys
think
got?
celebrate your champions. I think this is already happening across district in different buildings, right? It's happening. And let's put them on camera. Let's tape them. Let's do field trips. Let's congratulate them, right? And I think a lot of times people want to be around other successful folks, right? They want to catch that vibe and they want to be a part of it too. And I think that's the best way, is highlight your champions that already exist.
And
Awesome.
have them demonstrated exactly like Nancy said, like, this is how you start. You don't have to change the world in one step, just change one thing that will eventually change the world. Yeah, one baby step.
Yeah.
Emily, do you have thoughts as our chat manager and part-time conversationalist today?
The only thing that stood out to me, well, a lot of things stood out to me, but the last thing was just Heather's talking about having to have a champion. We found that with things like computer science and STEM too. So balancing that with trying to do systemic changes, and like Nancy was saying, having everybody in the district on board, everyone having their arrow aligned, and also finding champions that will, you know,
So
make
you're
things like
working.
this exciting for teachers that aren't the hard chargers, the first people in to try something.
Right.
Like that. What was it we were talking? Weren't we talking about the first follower thing one day?
Yes,
That was starting.
that's a great YouTube video. First follower, if
Yeah.
you guys haven't seen it.
Yeah. Fantastic. So, all right. So we are at 2:55. We are going to stick around for about another 10 minutes, but in about 20 seconds, I'm actually going to stop recording so that, and then we can just kind of chat informally. We'll stick around if, you know, anybody wants to come off mute or come on camera. We can definitely make that happen so that you can chat with us as well. The recording will get posted on social and on the AzTEA YouTube page by tomorrow, end of day, so that we can share it out and you can watch it again, because you know who doesn't want to watch us again, right? Because we've got so much cool stuff that we said and shared. We will not be having an afternoons with AzTEA in December. Believe it or not, we are moving into the holiday season starting next week. Yikes. I don't know when that happened because it was January like 5 minutes ago. And so we will be back in January. In January, we're going to be talking about AI. No surprise, so many people are talking about AI, but our lens is going to be, where are we today with it in terms of, you know, halfway through the school year, what's it looking like? And we'll have several panelists, one conversationalist, one of whom will be Emily Marshall, who's here today. She will not be managing chat. She will be on deck speaking about all the cool things that are going on or not going on, or everything that's happening in the world. So join us in January. Please watch us keep an eye on us on Facebook, on Instagram, and thank you for being here, and let us know how we can keep supporting you. So thank you to all of our presenters. Here's a round of applause to you. And thank you, as always, for being here. And now I'm going to officially stop the recording by saying thank you. So thanks, everybody.